Up in the mountains of the Balkans, there's a tea that's just steeped in legend. People say it does everything from soothing a cough to calming your mind. But, is that just folklore? Well, today on The Explainer, we're putting that legend to the test. We're taking an ancient herbal remedy from the mountainside straight into the modern lab.
Okay, let's dive right in. The plant at the very heart of this story is Sideritis scardica. You might know it as Ironwort, but most people just call it mountain tea. It's this really tough little plant with a history that's just as rich and aromatic as the tea it makes.
And, its history is literally baked right into its name. On the Greek island of Crete, they call it malathera. That comes from Italian male, for illness, and tirare, which means to draw out or draw in. To draw out the illness. I mean, what a powerful name. It gives you a pretty big clue about its reputation.
And what a reputation it is. For centuries, people have been using mountain tea for a truly incredible range of things. We're talking coughs, colds, indigestion, even anxiety. I mean, the list just goes on and on. And this is what sets up the big question for our explainer today. Do these claims, the ones passed down from generation to generation, actually hold up when we stick them under a microscope? But before we can even find out if it works, we have to ask an even more fundamental question.
Right. Whenever scientists look into any remedy, whether it's traditional or brand new, the first and most critical hurdle is always safety. Before you can even ask, what does it do? You absolutely have to know, is it harmful?
So to answer that, scientists put a Sideritis extract through a really rigorous multi-stage evaluation. They followed these strict international guidelines, checking for any immediate toxic effects, looking for problems after long-term use, and even testing to see if it could cause any dangerous genetic mutations. And the results from the 28-day study were especially telling. The researchers established what they call a no observed adverse effect level, basically the highest dose where absolutely nothing bad happened. And that dose was 1,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. That is incredibly high, which tells you there's a very, very wide safety margin. So after going through all the data, the blood work, the pathology, everything, the conclusion was crystal clear. The extract showed zero toxicity and no ability to cause mutations, which honestly lines up perfectly with its long history of being used safely by people for generations. Okay, so safety confirmed, check. Now for the really fun part. Let's see how those common traditional claims actually fare when they're examined by modern regulatory bodies. And it turns out, two of the plant's most famous and long-standing uses have actually gotten an official nod from a major authority over in Europe. And this is the key. The European Medicines Agency reviewed all the evidence and formally acknowledged its traditional use for relieving coughs from a cold and for mild stomach discomfort. This is modern medicine looking at folk wisdom and saying, you know what? You were onto something. But okay, what about those other claims, the more complex ones, the ones about mood and the mind? Well, this is where the science gets really, really fascinating.
I mean, you have to wonder, right? How could a simple cup of tea possibly have an effect on something as incredibly complex as our mood or our anxiety? Well, the answer is in its biochemistry. It's amazing. Scientists have actually uncovered two totally separate pathways that could explain how this tea works on our central nervous system. So, the first pathway. It involves an enzyme called monoamine oxidase, or just MAO. The easiest way to think of MAO is as the brain's cleanup crew. After your feel-good chemicals like serotonin and dopamine deliver their message, it's MAO's job to come in and sweep them away. So what researchers discovered is pretty cool. Compounds in the tea called flavonoids, they basically act as a brake on that enzyme. They specifically slow down the MAOA type. It's like they tell the cleanup crew to just take a little break. This lets those positive mood signals hang around in the brain for a little bit longer.
But here's what makes this really special. It's how it slows things down. Some older drugs are irreversible inhibitors. It can take your body over a month to recover. But the compounds in Sideritis are reversible. The effect is just temporary. It's much gentler, which makes it a far, far safer mechanism.
Okay, so that's pathway number one. The second pathway involves your brain's main brake pedals, the GABA A receptors.
These things are all over your nervous system, and when they get activated, they reduce excitability. They promote a feeling of calm.
Now, a different study found that certain aroma compounds in the tea do something really clever here. They don't hit the brake pedal themselves. Instead, they act as what's called positive modulators. It's a fancy term, but it just means they help your brain's own natural calming signals work better. It's like they give the brake pedal a power boost. So, after putting this ancient legend into the modern lab, what's the final takeaway? What have we really learned from all this? Well, our final scorecard shows a pretty clear pattern, doesn't it? Safety? Confirmed. Relief for coughs and colds? Validated by the officials. And for those more complex claims about mood, we now have really plausible scientific reasons for how they might actually work. And here's the crucial point. Science isn't debunking the legends of mountain tea. No way. In many ways, it's explaining them. It's revealing this complex cocktail of molecules that interact with our own biology in these really specific, really sophisticated ways. Which, of course, leaves us with one final, very provocative thought. The story of mountain tea just shows how these ancient traditions can hold real, verifiable biochemical secrets. And it just makes you wonder, right? What other ancient remedies tucked away in the huge library of folk wisdom are just waiting out there for their own scientific story to finally be told?